Well, welcome everyone to this session of Administrator Issues and Updates on March 18th, 2025. County Administrator Gary Schmidt, would you please call the roll?
Yes, Chair Roberts, thank you. Commissioner West is walking in, so I'll speak slow. Roll call. Commissioner Savas.
Present.
Commissioner Schrader.
Here.
Commissioner West.
I have a new seat. I'm here.
Thank you. Chair Roberts.
Here.
So, bye,
All
Martha.
right, thank
Bye.
you,
Bye,
Gary.
Penny.
And would you please introduce the first agenda item?
Yes, Chair, thank you. First, Oregon City Highway 213 Redland Road Intergovernmental Agreement with the City of Oregon City and Clackamas County. Nancy Bush, County Operating Officer, has a request of you, Board, and so she will present, and there was a memo in your packet as well. Go ahead, please, Nancy.
Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Nancy Bush, County Operating Officer. So the memorandum, this is for Redland Road 213, which is related to the courthouse. So this is one of the conditions that is in our Type 2 permitting that we have to meet. Obviously, we're not going to have all of this settled by the time the courthouse opens on May 1st of this year. So we're working on a IGA as well as a line of credit with Oregon City. So Oregon City is actually considering this tomorrow. So what we're here today is to ask you to give permission to either the Chair Roberts to sign this next week, both documents next week, or the County Administrator. So I'm happy to answer any questions or give any more background that you might need.
Colleagues, questions?
Well, I'll entertain a motion then, if somebody's willing to make that.
Well, Chair, maybe staff, Nancy, if you could just give a little bit of background where we were, where we are. It's a bitter pill.
It
That's
is-
why I'm
Yes.
a little bit resigned about this.
Yeah.
It just seems that it's such a intangible, frankly, to the courthouse, and it's, again, public dollars, and I'm just kind of concerned.
So there, as you know, when we as we're building the courthouse, we had to do traffic studies. One of the traffic studies that was required was at Redland Road in 213. And what we found out there is that, given if all of the development is done down in that area, we actually triggered it by 0.101%, which is a very, very low percent. So we continue to work on that. Actually, in the condition, it talks about doing 3 lanes going south into that area, which is only like half of a project, which also causes problems if we only do half of a project. So we want to work with Oregon City as well as with ODOT, because it's also an ODOT project, which also complicates it, to see what we can do with Redland Road in 213 that's more proportional to what we have. And that is like putting in 3 left turn lanes. We still have to work with ODOT on that. They haven't not agreed to that. If they don't, the IGA has a path in it for us to talk about how do we change the condition or how do we work on the condition in the future.
Okay, and lastly, maybe you already said it, but lastly, the dollars will be, we're sending Oregon City to be retained I won't say in trust, that's not the word.
It's a letter of credit.
It's a letter of credit.
Yes.
Okay.
So, and I don't know if Amanda or the letter of credit there's a legal, I don't know if you want to talk about that briefly?
I think I'd have Amanda and
Amanda,
Caleb come on up.
I guess what I'm getting at.
I don't want to get that wrong.
What I'm getting at, let's just say the project never happens. ODOT doesn't do it, the project never happens. What happens to the money?
So, do you want to answer?
Sure. Amanda Keller with County Council. The letter of credit essentially sets aside a certain amount of funding, 120% of the improvement, the cost of the improvements for the project as, essentially a performance bond to ensure that the improvements are completed. The IGA has a path forward for if ODOT does not agree to the proposed alternative for a potential revision of that alternative or potentially removing it. from the transportation plans if, certain, I think, conditions are met. So there are options there at that point.
Okay, but what happens to the money if the project never happens?
So if the project doesn't happen because the condition is removed and it's determined that the project doesn't need to happen, then the bond would be released by the city and the money would come back to the county. If the project is not completed because the county fails to complete it for some reason, then the city would call on that bond in order to ensure that those improvements are completed. And so the money would go to the city. Or ODOT, there's the option for ODOT to also be a co-beneficiary. So if ODOT was going to complete the project, the funds would go to ODOT.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused. When we said the county doesn't, in your earlier statement there, you said that if the county doesn't fulfill or do its part, we're not building it, right? It's ODOT that's going to build it.
That's my understanding. The condition is required of the county, and so we would need to enter into an IGA with ODOT to see that that improvement is completed. We haven't gotten to that step yet, so that's still a necessary step. If we do enter into an agreement with ODOT, there is a provision in the IGA so if we enter into an IGA with ODOT, they want payment upfront, because they're not going to, just do the project and then have us pay later. So in that case, as soon as we make a payment to ODOT for the estimated cost of the project, the letter of credit is released.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one other question. In this scenario, let's just say it's 10 years from now and the price of that project doubles. We're only bound for the current amount or we're bound for the future amount?
The performance bond is for 120% of the cost of the project currently, which takes into consideration that costs will increase over time. But my understanding is that the county would be responsible for the actual cost of the project at the time that it's completed.
Well, that begs another question. I'm sorry for being so, because it's a lot of money, and I know that our budget's going to be constrained for 30 years, so I'm looking at every penny. So what other option is there? I mean, can we just write a check to City of Oregon City or ODOT and said, here's the money, we want full release of any liability, build, it's up to you all to build it, here's the money. Is that an option?
Under the current land use decision, no. We are required to complete that project.
Okay, gives me pause. Knowing inflation could come back and be more money.
Yeah.
And there's a pattern of ODOT not having the money or being able to complete the projects right now, so that's my concern.
So I think the question before us, which has been presented to me, is requesting the approval of intergovernmental agreement and accompanying $3.6 million letter of credit with Oregon City for a traffic flow project necessitated by the courthouse, and really wanting the authority to have myself or Gary kind of have that signing ability. Is it, I guess the discussion amongst us is that something you want to do or not? Because I'm looking at my colleagues here.
I'm looking at you all, I just laid out my concerns. I'm not sure where I'm going to vote, but I just want to make sure you all understand that, if the project doubled, then it's $6 million, $6.5 million. Right? It sounds like our obligation doesn't stay fixed at that amount. And that's not because we're not ready to pay, that might be as a result of ODOT not ready to do the project, or Oregon City not willing to do the project. That shouldn't be our problem if they delay it, right? It's like the 205 bridge. It was supposed to be $250 million. It's going to be close to $1 billion. Not because anything else, but ODOT just didn't move on it at the right time.
I'm going to turn to Gary. Thoughts?
You're absolutely right, Commissioners. This is difficult and complicated, and unfortunately, and correct me, if we don't have this resolved in the next week, it's going to delay the opening of the courthouse, and it will delay the money the state is giving us to pay that milestone payment. So unfortunately, we're kind of stuck. Is that correct? We have to have this.
That is correct. I also want to make clear, too, that in the IGA, there are dates in there. So it's like they can't drag this out for 10 years. there are dates in the IGA, and the inflation was for, I think it was December 29, we had several dates in there, but I think it's December 29, that we have to have this done, and that's what the inflationary number reflects. And if you look at your packet too, there's a list in there, it's like, this is where we got our number and our estimate. So first of all, you need to understand there is a date in there. This can't drag out forever. And Gary is correct, that this is tied to the money we should be getting from the state for our milestone.
Commissioner Schrader, I haven't heard from you.
Yeah, I think we're pretty much, I agree with Gary. I don't like this either. But if we're going to move ahead with the opening of the courthouse, and this is a requirement, we don't have any control. This is just the reality if the cost goes up.
Yeah, and Oregon
But-
City is working with us. I
Pardon
want to
me?
make that really clear. Oregon City is working with
Okay.
us on this. They really are. The staff has been working with us diligently to get this resolved.
I personally think for the sake of the courthouse, we're going to have to, again, this is not ideal. I don't particularly like how it's gone down, but I think that building needs to be opened and opened on time. And I know the level of work, Nancy, that you have put into this, that needs to be honored as well in a very tough situation. So thank you.
All right. Commissioner West.
Ugh. It's nice to hear that Oregon City is right now being a good partner. Can you, are they also working with us on the permit on that road at the back end of the courthouse? How is that going? Is that resolved?
The
There's that
back
little
end.
road where we, like,
Oh, the
Yep.
Highland Court?
Yep.
Yeah, that's all settled.
yeah?
Yes.
I know that was very
That's good.
difficult.
It was.
I have no idea why.
Yeah, it was.
We're having to like take all the risk here and be dependent on other organizations that had a difficult time being good partners and making sure that the best interest of the taxpayer is being met. And we have a lot of uncertainty with this, what's going forward. I'm not totally sure how I'm going to vote. Yeah, I don't have a lot of confidence in ODOT, and there has been some tension between the county and Oregon City, though I think we all want to be good partners with these other entities. But I am concerned about the well-being of the county as a whole being stuck in a precarious situation, and there's some risk for us here for sure. Yeah, that's all I have, that's what I have.
All right. Well, I just want to comment that I think Paul actually brings up some really good points, so thank you, Paul. I think that Nancy answered one of my big concerning questions is that they do have some timelines, really,
Yes.
to kind of meet that, because as we all know, as time goes on, those escalation and costs increase dramatically. So I think that's really positive there. I think I do think this is very tied to the courthouse and moving forward. And so it does provide us some challenges. I mean, I stepped into this and a lot of the stuff, that ship has sailed. And, I also think it's important, since the building is over there, that we need to do what we can to get it open.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think we're at a point to entertain a motion or not, and then we'll just have to table this. So that's Gary.
So I don't want to pressure you, commissioners. If you do not authorize to go forward, the courthouse is not opening on May 1st. It will not open on May 1st, and we have the chance of losing our state match. I'm not trying to pressure or threaten. I'm telling the realities. So please consider that as you are about to vote.
So under those circumstances, which are unpleasant but real, I recommend the board authorize Chairs Roberts or the county administrator to sign the attached documents.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second it. I'm gonna, yeah, I'll second it. Hopefully there'll be just one more opportunity for a question for legal staff.
All right, discussion?
So I'm looking at the last page here. well, not the last page, page 15 of 17 of the packet. I'm just reading this one paragraph where it's basically says about the amount of the with the bank standby letter credit number, that 3,600,000. So that 3,600,000 is takes us to 2029. That's the obligation in 29, up to 29.
It's 120% of the estimated cost of the project, and that
let's have
estimated
that up
cost incorporated inflation, knowing that the project would not be completed today, that it would be completed over the next couple years.
Right, so it says the maximum aggregate amount of 3,600,000. So that's what we're obligating, not 120%, but 120% is the calculation that got us to 3.6.
Yes.
But 3.6
That
is the
correct,
maximum
yeah.
commitment.
That is
This
correct.
number won't change.
Okay,
Right.
all right. I'll support it.
So to be clear, Commissioner Schrader's moved to authorize myself or county administrator to sign the necessary documents for the Highway 213 Redland Road Agreement, and Commissioner Savas has seconded. We've had some discussion. Is there any further discussion? Seeing Commissioner West?
I'm going to begrudgingly vote for this today. And I think I already made my concerns known. I think Commissioner Savas brings up really important points. We got to open the courthouse. This isn't ideal. And I hope that we can look how to mitigate the risk to the county in the future. And we need to be creative staff to look and be aware of this. I don't want to see this balloon on us, and hold our partners' feet to the fire to make sure that the Clackamas County residents are getting what they expect and what they paid for at a reasonable cost. So I will be supporting this, but I do have real concerns around it.
Thank you, Commissioner. And my only other comment is, if we do not get that state funding, we're really looking at some financial challenges. We already have financial challenges, and I will just say that might push us over the top. So I think we're at a point Clerk, would you please call the poll? I think we're ready for that.
Commissioner West,
Aye.
Commissioner Savas,
All right,
Commissioner Schrader,
Aye.
Mr. Chair.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Clerk.
Thank you.
And Gary, what is up next?
Thank you, Commissioners. Next is your monthly Recovery Center update. Cindy Becker, Project Manager in County Administration, will present. There was a memo in your packet.
Good morning, Cindy.
Good morning, Commissioners. Cindy Becker, County Administration. If you were a Recovery Center campus, where would you be? So this is going to be a very quick update. We're currently involved in the paperwork. We are finishing up the subrecipient agreement, which, as I think I mentioned last time, is going to be for all the pre-construction work, so the design development of both facilities. And we will obviously be bringing that to you as we go through the various phases of design development. And so hopefully that subrecipient agreement will be completed. We've got several funding sources for it, and it will come back to you for approval. And we're also on a parallel track working hard on the zoning application. And we just got the traffic report done. So anyway, that's all going to be submitted. So we expect the subrecipient report to come to you in early April, and then to submit the zoning application around the same time, the end of this month, early April. So we're getting closer. And so we've been holding off on any tours or anything else because we want to make sure that you've signed, sealed, and delivered that subrecipient agreement before we do that. Once we do that, we're going to schedule tours for you at Fora, and we're also going to be opening that up to the Good Neighbor Group and anyone else who wants to come see the property. So that's my report. Any questions?
Yes, Commissioner West has a question.
I love these reports. Thank you, Cindy.
Welcome.
I am curious about a couple things. What is so we're going to be starting this process, it sounds like, in April. How long does this process take before we go to the next, fingers crossed, to the next phase where we're maybe ready to get to work on the property?
I'm thinking it'll be within the year, to go through all the phases, because there's schematics, there's development documents, there's permitting, it's a whole long process of things that have to happen, and we'll be coming back and forth to you, so probably looking at, I'm thinking a year. I have the dates, but I don't have them on me right now.
What is the when are we going to probably see renderings of whether or not we're going to utilize the property on site or whether we're going to have to build new? When do we know that in the process?
That'll all be within this time period. So
Within
they
this
will
time
make a
period.
determination about the utilization of the facility itself and where it would be situated on the property, and so you'll have all of that.
So will we be able to kind of build out the structures that kind of meet the needs of the entire care continuum that we're trying to meet? So the campus will have many functions for many different types of people, depending on where they're at in the recovery process.
Yes.
So we'll be able to say, okay, in this back west corner of is where we're going to have this type of housing, and over here is where we have this going on in this service. So that will kind of map everything out visually
Yes.
is it like a rough draft, or is that?
No, well, it starts with a rough draft, then over the next few months with input, it'll get more clear and more clear until we have the final that will be submitted for permit. So you'll see the whole thing at the various stages.
Okay.
And so, as I said, we're looking at 2 buildings. One will be the clinical services from detox, residential treatment, outpatient services, peer supports, et cetera. And then there will be the transitional housing that will also have peer supports. And the way it's being situated, why we're talking about it on the property, we are looking at an acre of open space, which we have to do because we're going to be reducing the total number of acres of open space. And so, but we're also situating in such a way that there'll be room for other services and other buildings on the property. So these 2 buildings are not taking up the whole property. There'll be, a large share of it, but there'll be room to do some additional structures on the property.
And there's currently, just so the public doesn't know, this property already has a school that was built around the turn of the century, early 20th century it was built, and its facade is quite beautiful, but it might have a lot of issues and is dated and need additional, fixing up or leveling based on, the realities of the building and its age, but it already even has a large structure on it that used to be a school, and it's about, how many acres? Almost 7? Total?
The property is 6.3 acres. The school itself is about 50,000 square feet. It has more than a couple of issues.
Yeah.
We had an assessment done of the building, and it's
tired.
It's tired.
It's tired.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this is really exciting. I think it's been, there's quite a buzz about it throughout the entire region because it's building that infrastructure necessary that we have not had here in Oregon, necessary to get people stabilized and on a pathway to recovery and successful in their recovery and not living on our streets and back in our community. And this is a really great approach. And it's actually quite innovative for Oregon. And Chair Roberts, you led a lot of this kind of stuff when you were on a smaller scale in the county. So I'm really excited by this. I can't wait for the next update. Maybe they're not, we are very excited by these updates. You came up here's just another quick update, but we are very excited and paying close attention. So thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm excited, but I think when all is said and done, you'll be very pleased with the renderings, and you'll have the opportunity to, talk about them and share input. And so I think you'll be with us through the journey.
Great, thanks. Commissioner Savas has a comment?
Yeah, I just want to, reflecting back about how long I've been taking people out to that site to say, just vision, just think, about what this could be. And it's been 8, 9 years of taking people out there. And I just want to say that I really appreciate Commissioner West. When I took him out there, his eyes got as big as baseballs. He goes, "What? We own this?" Well, kind of. NCPRD owned
We
it.
do now.
And took Chair Roberts out there here just about a month ago, and he saw the same thing. And Martha's been there all along. So
Yeah.
just want to thank my colleagues for finally seeing what this property can do. And by the way, properties nearby that we could possibly acquire to make this even a bigger campus than what we're seeing today, or what it is today. So lots of opportunity.
There's lots of opportunity, and my goal is to get this part right first, and as we start visioning from the rest of the property. But yes, we want to do that.
Great. Commissioner Schrader, any questions or comments?
Nope, glad we're moving forward with this, Cindy. This is fantastic.
Cindy and you and I've met and talked more about this, and I think one of the things I'm really looking forward to, just like on this master Red Soils campus up here, we kind of had this kind of visionary plan to what this campus is looking like. And so that's what I'm really looking forward to is I completely recognize your focus on the recovery piece. And I think Ben and I are also really excited to kind of see kind of what is the complete vision of this complex. And it really includes also clean and sober living outside of the complex, that people can live in their community. Also kind of how we're addressing kind of the mental illness issue with dual diagnosis. And so I think this is very exciting time for us, and just want to say thank you for your hard work on this. We're definitely very excited to see it move forward, and just let us know how we can help.
Great,
So-
thank you. I do want to emphasize again, this is focused on people with substance use disorders, but also with people who may have mental health issues as well. And so we will have the services for both of those on the campus, and I think there's lots of opportunities in terms of whether you want additional housing or whether you want additional services, you want to look at some of the other populations. So there's lots of choices. None of them are wrong. It's just a question of, what your priorities are and how we move forward. So thank you very much.
Very excited. Thank you, Cindy. All right, very nice. And Gary, what's up next?
Thank you. Next is Supportive Housing Services, Potential Performance Audit. You discussed this a few weeks ago, Commissioners, and staff is back to present options to you. Mary Rumbaugh, Director of Health, Housing, Human Services, prepared a memo, and we'll go through the options.
And with your
Thank you.
permission, I'll bring up Shannon.
Yes. Great. Shannon Callahan, Deputy Director, Housing and Community Development and Health, Housing, Human Services.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Great to see you again. It was just like, I don't know, an hour ago that I saw you. So as Gary indicated, back on February 25th, we were here in front of you all on a different topic around the Metro data sharing agreement. And in that conversation, there was a question really about sort of an audit. And so we were asked as really a follow-up at that time to talk internally and come back to you all with a request for some direction, but also some ideas also that we have. So we're here today asking for direction on whether to proceed with a performance audit of the county's homeless service system funded through the Supported Housing Service Measure, or to collaborate with Metro under their oversight authority. And I will just say that that would be our recommendation to you all. But I do want to give Shannon Callahan, HCDD Director, a few minutes just to talk a little bit more about background, the reason for performance versus maybe just a financial audit, the role of our county auditor in that, and some preliminary conversations that she's been having with Metro. So I'll turn it over to Shannon.
Thanks, Mary.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioner. Shannon Callahan, the Director of Housing and Community Development Division. As Mary indicated, it is our recommendation that if you were to consider there are two different types of audits, we would recommend moving forward with a performance audit. And a performance audit could help us align best practices with our programs, help inform strategic decision-making about programs to expand, to cease, or to create. And as well to make sure that we're meeting the evolving needs of our community, and in particular, our houseless community members. A financial audit is not recommended at this time, only because the county does undertake a rigorous audit of all of their finances on an annual basis. We further recommend that Clackamas is part of a performance audit with all of the three counties. So we would recommend, that's one of the reasons we recommend working with Metro, is so we can work with their oversight and accountability responsibility for all three counties. We also believe that collaboration with Metro is warranted because, frankly, they have the financial resources to undertake a performance audit. It is within their portion of the IGA that they reserve 5% of administrative funds over all three counties' allocations. And in our IGA, it specifically calls out audits as a purpose and a role of Metro within the government structure. Further, we have talked to our internal auditor who would like to be engaged in the strategic development with Metro on the audit design and approach. And so if that were if you directed us to go forward and collaborating with Metro, we would be bringing our auditor early into those conversations.
Great. Commissioner West has some comments.
So just for the public, the voters passed the Supportive Housing Services, we call it SHS. It is a high earning income tax. If you make a certain amount of money and you live in the metro area boundaries, you pay an additional income tax to help fund supportive housing services for those that struggle with being homeless, often populations that also have severe mental illness, substance abuse disorder, and severe trauma. And they're the people that you see persistently and chronically living on the streets in an unhealthy way throughout the Portland area, and especially in Portland. When that measure passed, in that measure, Metro, the overseeing body for the Tri-County area, was supposed to perform annual audits. They've done one in 5 years that was quite perfunctory, and it did not look good. It was not good outcomes. Since then, there's been a lot of inability for leaders to come together and to do what the voters expected and to bring maximum transparency to these dollars because of the situation and the sensitivity in which we are dealing with. So here we are. We just had Multnomah County, an impromptu, unexpected press conference from Jessica Vega Peterson, the chair of Multnomah County, announcing just in her SHS budget alone, not her general fund budget, which is also underwater, she told us that they were $104+ million shortfall. She wanted Clackamas County, Washington County, and the state to bail her out. It has been her message. The governor was shocked and upset by it. If you look at the news, Metro was shocked by this number, and so was Clackamas and Washington County. So I am now chairing the Supportive Housing Services Task Force to try to right the ship with Lynn Peterson, the Metro president, convening the leaders in the region to try to right the ship on SHS and regain voter trust, which is lacking significantly. The voters are upset. The voters don't feel like they're being listened to. They don't see significant improvement in this area in the metro region. And now they're just seeing giant budget shortfalls when we've spent $1.5 billion in the metro area to try to solve this problem. So Clackamas County has been one of the leading counties and one of the only success stories in all of Oregon the last 2 years on how we've handled this, and we always want to do better and lead by example. So I publicly called for Multnomah County to go for a full audit, forensic, performance. They also need a financial audit. They need all of them. They need every audit, every contingency of audit. I promise you Multnomah County needs it. But we lead by example in Clackamas County. So a couple meetings ago, I said, hey, I want us to lead by example. We need to do an audit because our voters expected it, because it was voted for in the IGA, and no one's stepping up and doing this. And so unanimously, this board came together and said, yeah, we bring sunlight, we'll be better. And we want an audit that does this. Couple questions. When we give money to an NGO or a group that's providing services, do we lose track of those dollars and not know how they're spent once we give them?
No, absolutely not.
So we're able to track those dollars? Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Do we have every indication that our finances and how we've managed this has been conservative and stable? Or do we have? You don't believe we have any issues that we've had any that we have any issues to worry about how the money is being given financially or used?
Commissioner, no, I do. I have no concerns about that. I think we've also Clackamas County has taken a good fiscal approach in making sure that we are funding ongoing programs with ongoing resources, and we've been very specific to make sure that we're using one-time resources for things like capital projects, so that our financial position is not the same as Multnomah County. They did not adhere to those same practices, which is contributing a little bit to their overall budget picture in regards to homelessness.
Thank you, Shannon. That's my understanding also, but I think the public would like to know that. I want to make sure that we are doing a bulletproof audit that truly will be critical of us so we can be better, because we want to continue to far surpass goals and expectations as a county. We want to be a little pocket of excellence where there's not a lot of it. And so I'm hoping that, yes, Metro should pay for it. And they have the money to pay for it, lots of money to pay for it. And they have a really big staff, and they probably have more money if their staff wasn't so big. However, I think that there's an avenue, and we can have conversations with Lynn Peterson and Christine Lewis and the rest of the council. I think we'll get there. I think they like the fact that we're bringing that additional pressure and accountability in the region by going ahead and forging forward with an audit. That's the conversations I've been having behind the scenes. But I want to make sure that it's like objective, that it's bulletproof. And I want to make sure that we are doing it in a way that like it's credible no matter where you sit on either side of the political aisle, and then we use that and we respond to the information we get. So if you guys, do you feel like it's being set up in that way that it could be completely objective, bulletproof in a way that the public will be like, it's above reproach or it doesn't feel like it has bias or ideology attached to it?
Commissioner, with this request this morning, we would begin to have more detailed conversations with Metro. We have had some preliminary conversations about moving forward with an audit, but this would not be the first part of the conversation with this board. And we would make sure that we're bringing back to you the plan that is, as you say, completely credible, independent, and bulletproof.
And how, if we use, I mean, if I was in the public and I'm not an expert on how government audits work, I mean, how would we be able to explain to the voters if our internal auditor was involved that it's completely biased and independent? How would we be able to like assure that if that's the case?
Commissioner, by having our internal auditor be part of the process to help make sure that we're setting up the right systems does not mean that our internal auditor would be performing the audit.
Okay.
We would have an independent audit done by another entity outside of Clackamas County, but making sure that we have the expertise of our internal auditor who does know about setting up correct and proper audits would be very helpful at the outset to help set the strategic direction for the audit.
I appreciate this. I'll finish with this. I appreciate that this board is wanting maximum transparency, maximum sunlight on this issue, and we are eager to work harder to build the trust of the public in this space. And we want to continue to show that we are operating in good faith that way. And so I hope whoever's watching, whoever's here, whoever sees this video and knows what we're doing understands that we're doing it for the good of the county, and I really believe to lead by example in the region. And thank you for bringing this forward.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so I'm not in disagreement with anything Commissioner West said, but coming from a slightly different angle, and that is that, what I have gleaned since the beginning of this whole SHS thing, that how Multnomah County does business in this field of work is different than Washington as it is different here in Clackamas. And we measure is different, right? So it seems to me that in light of all of the attention the media has gotten over all of this, and particularly the SHS dollars, because it applies to the metro region, it seems we ought to have some kind of a baseline standard of what the metrics are, and I'm not sure we're there. I guess I'm looking for some indication of where we are. And I'm also concerned that, I don't think that knowing that it's part of Metro's purpose of the 5% partially that audits be done, granted, but it seems to me that there ought to be comparable timed audits under a baseline using similar metrics and methods so that all three counties are being measured simultaneously. But there's nothing in here in this packet that says that. It says we're doing our own thing. Are the other two counties doing anything as far as their own audit? Because I would hate to see our audit, we do one, it's just dismissed because we didn't do it quite right, because there wasn't agreed upon standards, and then it's just a loss of public dollars. So I'm just wondering how we actually maximize that and actually get regional and statewide credibility out of it.
So apologies if that didn't feel very clear in the memo. That is absolutely our intention, is to work with Metro, that this would be a region, an audit across the region, but that Clackamas is interested in leading the work and sort of beginning to set that baseline framework, as you indicate, Commissioner Savas. But our expectation would be whatever is happening with Clackamas's audit is also happening with Multnomah and Washington at a baseline. There may be a need for additional auditing, as Commissioner West was indicating, for Multnomah County. We'll let them sort of tackle that. But absolutely, our recommendation would be that we would be approaching Metro about a region approaching this regionally.
Right. This may not be a fair question for you two, but I'm hoping, I assume it would seem to be good business for Clackamas County's auditor, Metro's auditor, Washington, Multnomah, all those auditors to get together and come to some kind of consensus to make sure that they've got, recommendations. And hopefully, ideally, there's someone out there, an auditor, that's got experience, right, in this field of work, right? So if it's going to be an external auditor, right, that they have, again, that level of experience to bring to the table to make sure that, whatever's done here is not all for naught.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Schrader?
Yeah, I also think our fiscal success has been how we handled this initial, measure that came forward. As many know, our particular county did not pass it. But since it was a regional measure and passed in the other two counties, we were, and one of the things we did to be fiscally responsible rather than borrow money from Metro to immediately set up something, because we didn't really have any parameters of what that would look like at that point, that it was Commissioner Savas and I that sat there and basically said, before we spend any money, we work with our financial department, and we sat there usually, it was at least once a week having meetings, or actually it was once a month at least, looking at what the revenue was going to be, so we knew what we could do. And then in the interim, it gave our staff the time to set up a really solid program, because as everybody knows, we have excellent staff in this arena here. So thank both of you for that. And I think the gist of it was we were able to, when we did implement, our programs were on the ground, so they were well run. We didn't go into debt. I think we took, $3 million from something like that, a small amount from Metro that we immediately paid back. But sometimes I think the success is in the planning, and this was a measure that really didn't provide us with much guidance with the planning of it at all. And so we really had to make sure we did it ourselves. And I'm glad now we are absolutely doing this. We're moving ahead with an audit that we are helping to initiate as well, because it was supposed to happen earlier and more frequently. But because this was such a, I don't want to say it wasn't thought out, but it was too fast, too quick, didn't give everybody a chance to really do some assessments that we are now, I think, being the lead in not only how we deliver the services, but in the assessments that we've done to watch the taxpayer dollars, particularly since our taxpayers were kind of leery. I mean, they're kind of leery of Metro and Metro's initiatives, so that was what we were dealing with. And my understanding is that, I don't want to be up in a way, point this out, but my understanding, Gary, our budget of the three counties is in the black. Is that correct?
We are solid,
Yeah.
pending further reductions that the Metro Council may make.
Okay.
Okay, correct?
We are. But we do have other fellow counties, am I correct, that their budgets aren't as stable as ours, that the metropolitan counties have the
Are you
most.
speaking about SHS budget or the entire county's
The
budget?
the SHS plus our entire county budget is in the black. That is not necessarily the case in our fellow counties at this point. So your fiscal management has been great too. So I just want to point that out to people, that this county has been dedicated continuously to make continuous improvement, but to be fiscally sound as we move forward with it. So if you take a look at the other budgets, you'll see of the Tri-County area, our budget is in the best and most stable state. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner West?
I just have to, before I get to my question to you, too, I have to piggyback on that. We have been the most financially conservative and restrained and responsible out of the region. And we have by far the best outcomes on one of the most perplexing and persistent issues up and down the West Coast with this specific population that is continuing to struggle and live on the streets. The board over the last 2 years have governed this and navigated this far better than anyone else in the state, and that's just the facts. And so I'm really proud of the work this board has done, and we continue to take those same values moving forward with this new board. I think that we're just hitting the ground running, and we want to continue to govern locally that way. I want to be clear. I'm hoping the plan is that regardless of what the region does or whether or not Metro decides to do, we lead with Metro for a Tri-County regional audit, that we look at our own house and will do one no matter what in Clackamas County. So let's say we continue to have issues with data coming from Multnomah County or the bickering and the squabbling and the inability to figure it out. Even though we were supposed to not do these are supposed to be annual audits that were expected by the voters, they're just flat out not being done. I'm hoping that that becomes our practice in-house. I'm hoping that we lead by example within Clackamas, and if we can get the region on board, awesome. But if we can't, we still do what the voters expected, even though it might be at our own expense. I don't think it will be. I think Metro will even pay for our own audit if it was just Clackamas County, because they are feeling the angst around this too. But yes, ideally for all in the region. If not, we will lead and do it for our voters to build that trust, is what I'm hoping is what our plan is.
Yeah, we can support that, and if we don't get the support of Metro, then we will just need to have a conversation about how it's
Cost and what that looks
exactly.
like. Okay, thank you.
Great. The only comment I have, just a couple brief comments, and Ben kind of mentioned it. I really feel like the tide is changing. And Ben's the vice chair of the Supporting Housing Dollars, which is very exciting to have him as the vice chair. I represent the chair as far as the Tri-County. There's a chair from each county that is part of that. And so we're very united on our direction and feel it's incredibly important. And this is a credit to staff. And Shannon, you've been going to a lot of these Metro meetings. We've had lots and lots of conversations, and there hasn't been any audits. And one of the first questions I asked you is, I said, well, how about we do our own audit as we talked? And I think this is very telling. And that is when you're willing to open your doors and say, look at us. We're all about trying to do better, and you have just said, yeah, let's do it. We'll take the lead, and so it's very exciting to really see Clackamas as doing the first audit and helping set kind of the course for the others. I know it's going to be a collaborative approach working with that. So hearing the conversations I've heard today, really that it's a performance audit, not a financial audit. And that you're asking to involve our internal county auditor. And I think, from my colleagues, I think that's the direction that we're headed in. And unless there's any other direction that you need, Gary, any other comments?
No, so staff is going to see if we can do a collaborative effort with Metro and the 2 other counties. If not, we'll come back to you and move forward on an internal audit just for us. But it really would be better if the other counties got involved, and we can't direct that. We can only ask them to participate. So the reason there's no motion today is because I want you to give direction to staff, which you have. Then we'll come back to you with their results of their outreach for next steps.
Thank you.
Great. Do you have another comment?
Question along those lines. Thank you, Chair. I want us to try to move much faster than what is traditional for bureaucrats, please. And please, Gary, I know we give you guys a lot.
Are you insulting county staff, Commissioner?
I would never, because I love county staff, but our county staff, I think, wants to move fast too, because they care about this issue, and I appreciate that work. But let's move as quick as possible, and then within that effort, please also be ready to pivot quickly if we need to chart this alone, because we're just not getting movement. I don't want to give too much time within the region and spinning our wheels. I don't know if the board agrees with me, but that's what I would ask.
Yeah. I think there's agreement. Paul, you have a comment?
Yeah, thanks, Gary, for clarifying that my regional concerns may not even come to fruition, right? So that's what I was trying to get clarity on. If we don't get it, I think that's great, but I would certainly like to have a better understanding of what the cost is going to be, because if we do it and then someone's critical of it, then it's just a piece of paper that, oh, they did their own audit. Of course they did their own audit. Of course it's going to look good because we painted it that way. That's why I think that credibility of what the final document is. I want to make sure we get value and credibility at a regional and a statewide level. It could be all for naught. I want to just acknowledge what just Commissioner Schrader was speaking to. We were very structured, very pragmatic about how we approached this. We were criticized for our approach. But in the end, that's why we've been so successful, because we started out lean, we were lean, and we've done this, I think, right. And aside from the politics, but there again, I'm just concerned that this might just be viewed as a feel-good audit if the region doesn't join us in this effort.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Savas, and I think we're pretty clear. Gary, and thank you both for coming today. I appreciate it. And Gary, what's our next item tonight?
Thank you. We'll report back on that item. Next, review of your business meeting agenda for this Thursday, March 20th, 2025 at 10 a.m. You have a presentation from Metro on the Metro Supportive Housing Services Fiscal Year 2024 Regional Report. You've done this once a year, so the members of the committee that represent the county will be here to present this for you this Thursday, as well as you have a lengthy consent agenda for Clackamas County, the Development Agency, Water Environment Services, and the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. If you have any question on a consent agenda item, as per our new protocol, please tell me prior to Thursday, so staff can be in the room to answer your questions if you have them. That is your agenda for this Thursday's meeting.
All right, thank you. So make sure you contact Gary if you have questions. And how about shifting to the next item?
How about the highlight of the day to discuss the commissioner appointment process for position 4 on the Board of County Commissioners. Staff and I prepared a memo for you, which is in your packet and online, and would like to walk through with you your options for a process to select an appointment to fill the vacancy, and hopefully you'll provide direction today so that we can move forward. So quickly, several of you have asked, so let me just share publicly. You have asked, can you keep this position vacant until the next election? The answer is no. By state law, you must fill a vacancy and a board member of the Board of County Commissioners. Second, could you do a special election in the next 2 or 3 months to have the voters choose to fill the vacancy? The answer is no. By state law, you must appoint someone now, and then the next general election, which, as you already heard from Clerk McMullen last week, would be in 2026. November 2026, unless there's more than 2 candidates, then it would be May 2026. So I'm sorry, you do have to appoint someone to fill this position. Now, up to that, it's entirely up to you how to fill that appointment. You could directly appoint someone today, for example, and be done with it. That is an option. Or you could go through a recruitment type process, which is what this board has done the last several times you've had a vacancy. In your packet are several attachments if you chose the recruitment style process. So I'm just going to jump into the options for a recruitment style process if you chose to do that. I'm going to jump to attachment B. B as in boy. Attachment A talks about if human resources were to lead the recruitment for us. Unfortunately, or fortunately, HR has been doing a year-long plan to update its recruitment software system, which happens next week, which means every recruitment must be closed by next week. There's no way you want a 5-day recruitment, so I'm going to propose that the county administration office collect applications. We'll still work with HR, but we're going to skip the HR process because of that infrastructure change. It's been planned a whole year. We can't change the dates of that. So that's why attachment B is in boy is what I'd like to draw your attention to. If you agree to do a recruitment style process, we could open the recruitment tomorrow, Wednesday, March 19th, 2025. We would create an email address so that applicants would submit a cover letter and a resume. That would be it. Cover letter and a resume through our board office. I'm proposing that if you were to follow this process, we would do a 2-week period of recruiting. 2 weeks. It's quick, but everyone pretty much knows this is happening right now. It's not a surprise to the public, and of course we do outreach today if you were to approve this, press, media, community outreach to let everyone know in case anyone's not listening. So it would be a 2-week open recruitment to close on Wednesday, April 2nd. Staff would compile all the resumes and cover letters and give them directly to you, commissioners. We'd give you a week to review all of those applications. And then we're looking at the week of April 7th and 10, 11. You would then narrow down the candidates to a number you decided. And then looking at the week of April 14th, would do interviews, all in public, of course, with the candidates that you have selected to interview. The following week, April 21st, we could do a second round of candidate interviews if you wanted to narrow the pool down further. We also could do a community meeting of a meet and greet so the public could meet those candidates, all with an effort to have you select someone by the end of April. So this whole process takes approximately 5 weeks, which I think is the quickest we could do it, to be fair and to give everyone plenty of time to apply if they were interested. So that is the proposed timeline. If you don't mind, I'm going to go through all the attachments, then I'll stop talking and hear your questions.
No, that's
or
great,
concerns.
Gary. Continue.
Attachment C, as in cat, are potential sample questions you could have as part of the application process that you would ask to be added to the cover letter. If you wish to have, one, a writing sample, but second, just to hear more ideas of what the candidate would offer should they be selected. These are sample questions that you have used on prior recruitments for open board seats, such as, why do you wish to serve as a commissioner? In your opinion, what are the most pressing issues facing Clackamas County? What attributes uniquely qualify you to be a Clackamas County commissioner? What expertise and experience will you bring to the commission? Please describe your particular interest in any specific aspect of county service. Please include in your explanation why it is of interest to you. So again, these are sample questions, and I would advise don't pick not more than 2 that we would include as part of the cover letter process that applicants would submit. These are not interview questions you ask later. This would be as part of the application process. If you chose, you don't have to do this. Again, moving forward, attachment D. Again, the minimum qualifications to serve as a Clackamas County Commissioner mainly is to be a registered voter in Clackamas County. To be a registered voter, of course, you must also be a United States citizen, and you must be at least 18 years of age. As well, for the election in 2026, you must have been a resident of Clackamas County a minimum of the previous 12 months before the election. It's silent as far as an appointment, but obviously you would assume the person hopefully lives in Clackamas, yes, must live in Clackamas County for the appointment process. But the election requires 12 months prior to the election must have resided in Clackamas County. Last time you asked for suggested criteria that you could consider as part of the review process. Again, you don't have to have any criteria outside of the minimum qualifications I just mentioned. However, if you'd like to have criteria as a discussion point for you today, staff and I have come up with a few bullets for you to consider, and they are geographic area of residence for the candidate. Do they have prior elected experience, and what is it? Do they plan to run or not in the next election for this seat? You had discussed informally maybe appointing someone who is not going to run, so it would purely be a caretaker seat. You could ask that question of the candidates. Years of community experience and what types of community experience they have, and any specific expertise in an issue or policy area you felt were important to serve as a commissioner. Again, these are just suggestions. I'll stop talking shortly, and you can consider those as part of the application process. Finally, attachment E is the public input opportunities. You've already received a lot of emails, commissioners. I know you know that, a lot of emails. You would continue to receive emails from the public to the board email address. The public would be invited to attend the public interviews. I am recommending a public session for candidates to meet the public, which we could do 1 or 2. I would suggest 1 if we want to do a 5-week process. And of course, the candidates would just be available to the public. So I'll stop talking. There's a lot of information here today, but what I'm seeking your direction on, commissioners, is do you want to do a recruitment process? And if so, do you agree with the template that we've offered? And we could start as soon as tomorrow. And if you want to have criteria as part of the application process, would like to hear that today. Now I will stop talking. Thank you.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to take them in order. I wrote them down. If we're going to start, opening the application process, I would prefer 3 to 4 weeks, frankly. If we are going to do a 2-week application process, like suggested here, The only way I could get there is if there was a week of advance to where we could advertise and ramp that up so people knew in advance. So there's no ramp-up period, especially if we start today. So if we start today, I would lean more towards 3 to 4 weeks. I heard what you said. I'm not sure that everyone's really aware of the vacancy to some degree. I think they're aware of perhaps what was covered on the news, which was the controversy, not necessarily the opening, right? I think that's two different things. That said, I don't mind the questions. I don't mind the way it's worded here about, things that might be considered as criteria. I think in the past, we've done that before. We may consider geographic. We may consider, it's not that we will or will eliminate anyone, but I think worded that way, where may choose is a key word. I think that got perhaps lost in some people's interpretation of what's been discussed thus far. The other one, too, I have had a lot of people reach out to me and say, I want to sit down with you. I want to talk to you. And I want to learn more about it. And I thought, geez, if there's 80 people or 50, because that's been the number roughly that people apply, that's a lot of time for each of us. And I thought that also be a disadvantage if someone did get that opportunity and someone else did not. That wouldn't level the playing field. So Chair Roberts, you and I talked about that a little bit. So I think maybe what would be the process if an applicant said, well, geez, I want to learn more, and I'd like to either contact a commissioner or so. How do we direct that in a way that is equitable to all? And I think that ought to be something that we ought to discuss here, because I've already got a list of people that apparently want to reach out and talk to me. And I don't have the time to talk to 80 different people, let's just say hypothetically, and give an hour or 2 hours. I just don't have that in my calendar. It's just not that much time in the day to do.
Commissioner Schrader?
Overall, Gary, I think it's a good process as someone who's been through an appointment process and has also been in the process of appointing people. I, too, also have received numerous emails. There is a lot of interest out there. It seems to be some very quality candidates, I think, that could be considered. And I think my personal experience is if we can get it filled sooner than later and give us a complete commission so we can get our, assignments and priorities, in alignment, I think that's the best way to go. But yes, we get contacted by everybody who wants to talk to us. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than 80 applicants. So.
Yeah.
Because it's a fun job. Well, fun. Fun is relative. Fun is relative. Let's just say it's never a dull moment, and you never know what you're going to walk into every day. But by and large, it's a very rewarding way to serve our public, I think, in this county. So.
Thank you, Martha. Commissioner West, your thoughts?
First thing on the sample questions, second bullet point, it says, in your opinion, what is the most pressing issues affecting Clackamas County? I think anybody who's paying attention at all should be able to that's easy, that's a softball. I want to add to that question, what policy interventions would you advocate for and support to address those issues? I want to see if they have any understanding of policy or how we should approach difficult issues that we address. I agree, ideally, we would have a longer process. However, I think anybody who's applying that isn't paying attention to when the application process opens up probably isn't prepared to be a commissioner. It has been wall-to-wall news coverage, and there are a lot of people already waiting to jump in and apply. So if you're not ready when we push go on the website, you probably aren't ready to be a commissioner. We don't have the luxury to coddle people to jump in and apply. We have a lot of important business to do. We're also going to be jumping into budget season. Here, we're kind of already there, which this needs to be not bleeding into May, in my opinion. So that's one issue that I would like to address. I want to be very clear that I do agree with Commissioner Savas on some things we may consider. Never once at all, ever, has anyone said, thou shalt be from the rural area, or thou shalt belong to this specific party, or had some type of an agenda behind this. We're trying to stabilize the county. We're trying to help the county move forward from something that it's never faced before. And we're trying to do the best we can to represent everybody regardless of what party they belong to, and who can hit the ground running with the smallest learning curve and without any kind of surprises in their background to make sure that the county is stabilized and we're being stewards of the best interest of this county. So there has been a lot of fervor and opinions and flat out lies promoted to try to pit one of us against one another, or to bring doubt into the process in which we're trying to be ultimately transparent in. I fundamentally reject those efforts. I want to be clear about that. So if you're listening and you've sent those emails and you've said those things, it's not helping your cause or case. Be truthful, be honest, advocate for what you want to happen. We support that. But much of what has been said has not been helpful. And so we got to come together and do what's right. I'm just curious, by law, the board may choose to consider the following criteria. Can we put specific, do we have the authority to say, or is that discriminatory, or is that like not allowed by state or federal law? Like, is there like, where is this line here with like, we may, we should, we must, we're only going to accept people from, you know, over in this geographic area of the county, or we're only going to take people from Lake Oswego? You know, can we even, I'm just asking if that's even allowed. I don't know if that's and then, can we put strong criteria? What are the boundaries that we can or cannot do? I don't know what's allowed for sure under law.
Jane, could you answer, please?
So the statute's silent as to the criteria. So I would say that's more of a political question than a legal question.
Okay. Okay, I don't know what the board feels about that. I do kind of like what Commissioner Savas, that we may look at somebody based on the overall benefit to the county. It brings a diversity that maybe this board doesn't have. So we're not experts in everything. You know, 2 of us live in Wilsonville. We have 1 commissioner in Lake Oswego. You're in Oak Grove, right? So like there's a lot, the county's big. It's larger than the state of Rhode Island. Not that Rhode Island's big, but it's big for a county. And it's quite diverse all the way from Molalla, Estacada, DeLaco. We even get a little bit of Portland in our boundaries. So we have, 16 independent cities, from tiny to decent size. So I think we just want to have, we all are at large for the public. We don't have districts, which means I gotta advocate and fight hard for what's happening up on the mountain. I see Commissioner Humbertson nodding his head because he's done the same thing. I had to fight for them, even though I live on the other side of the county and it's an hour drive to get up there but I still gotta advocate for that little library in Welch's, right? The same way I would for the one in Wilsonville. So, that I think that's part of the understanding here, but it does, in reality, benefit us to have different perspectives because the county is so large, and there are perplexing issues in different parts of the county where we may not have a total pulse on what's happening in certain areas because, you know, the county's big and we're all over the place. So I think that I'm open to looking at those things. I don't know what the board thinks about my additional kind of, kind of expanding on that second bullet point. I just want to get a better idea about policy knowledge and understanding and thoughtfulness and writing skills in somebody with that question. I don't know. I'll leave it at that. Those are some of my concerns and thoughts.
So, first of all, I want to thank all my colleagues for their input there. I think as I look at this, trying to determine how to help Gary and county staff, I think we ought to take little bite-sized pieces of this. I think the first question that we should answer is, do we want the recruitment through HR, or do we want the applications to come to Gary? I would suggest that to get the process moving quickly, would suggest they go through Gary. Is there a nod ahead that's?
I agree with that.
Is that all right?
Through the county administration office, not me.
The
directly,
county
but-
administration office is what I meant.
I agree with that.
Okay, so we've answered one question there. The second question I think we need to answer is the timeline. And I heard Paul's input. I'm not 100% sure where you're at, Wes, but my inclination is to move quickly. I know this took about 3 months before. I do agree with Commissioner West that that is pretty well known out there that there is an opening. And in a lot of job applications, they post them and will give you that period of time. So, and we might have to do some other things to make sure the message is out there. I would turn to PGA or something. So I think the next question is do we want to move forward with Gary's timeline? Or do we want to push it out 3 or 4 weeks? So I think that's a decision. So, Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, so one of the things I mentioned, it's related to that answer, or related to how I would answer that, is the applicant's communication and opportunity to get information, right? If they can't get it from us, how much capacity do we have, admin, right, to answer those questions so that people have a fair shot within whatever that timeline is, right? If the timeline's so compressed and they can't get all the answers, they're probably not, let's say 80 people or 100, I don't know what the number's going to be. Obviously, the longer the window is, perhaps the more people apply. But I would respectfully have my colleagues consider 3 weeks if we started right away, because under the recommendation here, it would start very soon. So give it 3 weeks because there's been no ramp up, and consider that how much time it takes for people to do their homework and answer questions that they think are relevant, that they might want to inquire about the county before they fill out their application. So I think that's a factor in there. So to Ben's point, he did ask about input on the questions, and one thing I want to say that I would prefer, maybe instead of saying what's the top thing facing the county, whatever that may be, maybe what the top 3 things that are facing the county.
And maybe we can come to those things.
Yeah,
but trying to bite one thing off
But
at a time.
I just want to throw out that I just really think that I know you all feel, and we're in a vacuum, right? People that we know, they know, but there's a lot of people out there that don't know. They know it's coming, some do, but they really don't know it's out there. So again, absent any kind of a week ramp up to get it marketed and out there, people may not learn of this for another week. I mean, you start tomorrow or today, they might not even find out on our social media and how we push this out for a week or so. That gives very little time for people to reply, get their questions answered, and respond in a decent way on the application. So I just ask for 3 weeks.
Okay, so I hear you're at 3 weeks.
Minimum.
I think Commissioner West, where are you at?
Sure. So I'm looking at the timeline. It says recruitment's open for 14 calendar days, announcement recruitment. So when would we be, on your current timeline, Gary, when would the announcement go out? It looks like recruitment doesn't start till the 19th, so we are now, what is today, the 18th? So it starts tomorrow? My gosh, it's already the 18th of March, dear Lord. So open on, applicants start tomorrow. You can fill it out tonight, and you could turn it in tomorrow, and then that starts your 2-week process?
If you agreed, staff would be ready to open the quote recruitment tomorrow, including doing press and outreach tomorrow. Everything would hit go tomorrow.
And then we would close it on the 2nd of April.
April 2nd, which is 2 weeks from tomorrow, if that's what you agree.
And Commissioner Savas, what are you proposing as an additional timeline to what is the 2nd? April 2nd is on a Wednesday. Would you be, if we pushed it out to the 7th, which is or to the Friday, at the end of business day on Friday, the 4th? Or do you want to go into the 2nd week of April?
Well, it's not that I want to, I'm being considerate, and I'm also thinking if I'm an applicant, how do I do my homework so I can fill that application out correctly? And if I don't learn about it until, let's say, Saturday, I mean, I've got very little time, right? So I'm just being considerate and so I'm, not that I want to jump out in the 2nd week of April, but I don't think, 7 days would hurt. So I would say the minimum of the 9th, maybe closed on the 11th of April. Have a close date, that's not in the middle of the week, have it on the 11th, and have that be the close date.
Can we move faster on the back end to still meet our original deadline of the 30th or the 29th? Can us commissioners move faster?
Well, it depends how fast you all want to work, but yes, staff, we can make it work.
I want to do it sooner than later. I have one day when I'm going to be on a plane, but then I'll be available for the rest of it. So.
Fair enough, taking into consideration Commissioner Savas at a spring break, of course, next week. So a lot of people may not be filling out an application on spring break. So I'm willing to maybe we should work to that extra week, but do we
Yep.
still want to keep to the timeline? I don't know, what do you think the timeline of the last day of April? Do you think we can get there?
I think, I'm trying to hear what all my colleagues are saying. I guess I'd pose the question is, Gary's proposing 2 weeks. If we extend the whole process 1 week longer, would that be amenable to my colleagues?
And that would put us at the end of February.
And May is a busy month, man.
Well, Gary said we might be able to compress other parts of this, so you're still early possibly under the same timeline. All I'm saying is extend the application process, not extend the whole process, just
Okay.
the application process. That's what I'm lobbying for.
But keep the rest of it.
Yeah.
Gary, I'm going to turn to you because you're the one responsible for
Yes.
doing it.
If you choose to go 3 weeks, that's fine, but I'm going to recommend it be Wednesday, April 9th.
Okay.
And that gives that rest of that week for the clerk, and the clerk McMullen's been fantastic. She's offered to help verify the registered voter status and that, which only she can do and her staff. That would give her 2 days to do that. We could have packets for you no later than Monday, April 14th, and respectfully, that's up to you then to do the homework. If you have 100 applications, you'll have to go through them pretty quick to get information back to me by Wednesday, April 16th, basically 2 days. Would you do that, commissioners? We'll work on your timelines, but
We all have the weekend too, right, if we wanted
we
to?
would have an addition, well, we want to we want to notify candidates that they're being interviewed for the following week, April 20. We can make this work, commissioners.
But we would have the
We'll make
12th to 13th also on the weekend if we wanted to do a little extra fun
Yeah.
reading.
Well, I think what might help too, Gary, is if there was an ability to let us see some of that as they came in and not wait until the very last.
We could do that,
And then
yes.
that way, we could kind of, as they're coming in,
Yeah.
kind of have a chance to review
do a
those.
weekly update with you on where they're at and
We're
send
not
you the
just on
yes, that's
drop
possible.
dead date,
Yes.
getting 100.
If it really starts to slow down and we're not seeing additional applicants, can we amend?
No.
No,
Don't
once you
amend.
once you
Crystal
post
clear
it.
on the
Posted-
timelines.
It's good,
Yeah.
okay.
Again,
So does
We
April?
can make it work. We can make it work
Yes.
with the 3-week process.
I would ideally like to have it done by April 24th. I'll be honest. That's where I'd like to, if we can do that.
By the end
Is
of
that
April.
doable, Gary?
Again, it's how fast you're willing to review applications, but we can make it work. We have to we need to give the candidates time. If we can't give them a 24-hour notice of an interview, we want to give them a few days' notice. It's up to you if you want to do 2 rounds of interviews. If you only did 1 round of interviews, that would shave off time as well. There's a lot of unknowns based on the candidates
And
how
the
many
number.
apply and their qualifications. But we can make this work we're still on the question of a 3-week application process. Yes, we can make that work for you to still appoint someone by the end of April.
Okay. Is that good?
3 weeks, or April 9th?
April
Yes.
9th is my recommendation.
Yeah, and Chair, I presume we're going down this, and I appreciate the method process here, but if we're just going down, I do want to talk to, if we narrow, how many people we narrow it down to at some point. Is that going to be, are you going to go down, Chair, on the,
I'm trying to go down Gary's list here, and Gary's going to also give us a hand here, but I would like to shift to the questions and kind
Yes.
of get that done. And then maybe as we kind of move forward, wrap up with,
Come back to.
is that all right, Gary?
Yes, yes.
So I think we're going to switch to, I got to go find the attachment again.
Attachment C.
Attachment C.
Attachment C.
And I heard Commissioner West say he felt like question number 2, take that out. Is that correct?
I just want to change it because, I mean, they can literally just do Chat GPT and be like, what are the pressing issues for Clackamas County, and get a quick list, right? So I want somebody that has some thoughtful policy knowledge that shows that, hey, I'm a quick learn, or I already got some knowledge and I can hit the ground running really quick. Because this job is tough, man. You can sit here for a year and be like, I still don't know half the stuff going on, and a lot comes at you fast. And so some expertise, some knowledge, some understanding, some background, some history to me is important as we look to stabilize the county. And so I would like the question to be something, that's fine. You can say your issues that are affecting the county are 3 issues or 1 issue or whatever we decide. But something that gets at what policy interventions would you like to advocate for on those specific issues? And how would you, and how would you advocate and support those interventions? Like, what would you do? What would you advocate for?
So I think a couple things in the interest of time and kind of rephrasing this. I think that there's kind of 2 areas here. One of which some of those questions might be in the interview process that we ask. And when I look at this, it kind of Gary's asking us to pick 2. really as written responses. That's out of this. He's like to pick two.
Yes, so no more than two. This is for the application process, for the cover letter. This is a way to help you screen candidates as you're reading these answers that candidates give. That's it. These are not interview questions. You can have all the questions you want when you interview the actual finalists. This is just for the application.
Develop them then.
I-
Okay.
Interject, or do you want to?
Well, I think that, I'm really trying to follow kind of the recommendations of staff as much, because I think we're going to have lots of questions on the interview process, and will give us a chance to kind of work on those. Again, if our goal is to get this notice out, is to kind of try and be somewhat succinct on this. So, as an example, I think, a question here is what attributes uniquely qualify you to be a Clackamas County Commissioner? Is kind of a good question, I think. And really what expertise or experience will you bring to the commission? As kind of a broad question that hopefully will give us some insight. So, Commissioner West, your thoughts?
I want tougher screening than out the gate. We have to move fast. If you can't, I want you to have to think. I want you to know the county, and I think that some of those are pretty softball-y, and I don't need to read why everyone, in the shower thinks they're ready to be a county commissioner. I mean, I just want more meat on the bone. And why do you wish to serve as, well, I kind of, maybe that gets to a little bit about your philosophy and worldview in public service, but that's not going to be a big dividing factor. And one, we'll be able to see how you can write. We can put word limits and give more questions, like you have maximum of 100 words total to answer every question, but when you really I want to get into the meat of somebody before I bring them up to interview, and I want to use this process as not a kumbaya moment, it is a weeding out moment, really, to be are you ready? A tip for us to do this. That's my thought.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, the one question I always look at, I've been through quite a few appointment processes, whether it's for the commission or for state legislative vacancies or whatnot. And one question I always look at, and I feel is valuable, and the question is not quite worded that way, but is their level of what have they done for public service? Whether, not necessarily elected, but what have you done to contribute to your community? So community service is probably the right word. Describe your community service, and if it's none, it's none, right? But I put a lot of stock and value in that, because not only do you learn things about areas of the county, but you also learn things about their commitment and the time commitment they're willing to put forth in a way. So I put a lot of stock in that question, and that would help me sift out, frankly, a number of applications that I might say, yeah, this is a candidate, or maybe this person has no experience in this. And really, and another question ought to be there, and I don't like limited to two, because I want to better understand. For example, it was just a matter of months ago, we realized that how we do business, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, or Monday, we weren't necessarily available, all of us, right? And I'm thinking, wait a minute, this is a full-time job, and you're expected to be here. So I don't know, there needs to be something about availability. Are you available? Do you understand the magnitude of the work and that this is a full-time job? Something speaks to that, because if they're not willing to be here or work 5 days a week or 4 days a week, granted, I'll be qualified. I know the county's a 4-day week, but I'm busy on Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays doing this job. But there again, I want to make sure people realize this is not a part-time job. It's not like working for city council where you show up for a night meeting once or twice or 3 times a month. This is different.
Okay. How about we do this? Trying to move this ball forward. It sounds like there's definitely input from two of my colleagues for sure that feel like there should be more than 2 questions, right? So I think an easy way to kind of start working down this is, let's go through these questions as they are and leave it or take it out. Let's start there. I do agree with Paul that we should have something in there about work schedule, that are you able to kind of meet these demands and whatever that, just like a regular job announce would be here. And so I agree, Paul, that was a good comment there. So And I'm sorry, Martha, I'm going to come back
Oh,
to you.
that's so fine. Not a problem.
But would that be okay if we just went through these questions and go yay or nay? So the first one is, why do you wish to serve as a commissioner? You want that in or out? I'm just going to look at you real quickly.
If we're going to have a limited number of questions, I don't think.
I mean, I'd say right now, we'll put them in. Whoops. And so you're a thumbs up or down? Down, and
I
you're,
think it can be better. I'm not opposed to something along those lines, but the way it's worded now, I'm down.
okay. And Commissioner Schrader on question number 1.
Number 1, I think that's pretty wide open, and they could give people some leeway to really
Okay.
understand what we're trying to get at.
So I think we're at probably a no on that one is what I'm kind of seeing. You two guys are no, right?
You
Yeah,
don't- you
yeah.
want it more detailed? Give me,
I think it could be written a little more specific and pull a little more out of a candidate than that.
Find out what background, what you've done in public service.
I think tying it
that's
to
what you're
that
getting
with
at.
like
Okay.
public service and community service is smart.
Okay.
And I was thinking maybe one of those others we could kind of roll into it. So the next number 2 question is, in your opinion, what are the most pressing issues affecting Clackamas County? In or out?
I would keep it in if it was, do you think are the 3 most pressing issues facing the county?
Okay.
I want to know, what do you think the 3 most pressing issues of the county are, and what policy interventions would you advocate for? I want them to not just say housing and homelessness, but I want to know exactly what they believe is the right direction in tackling that issue, or maybe they specifically speak to a tolling or transportation issue. I want to see if they have some meat on the bone there with their not just seeing a problem, but how to solve it.
Commissioner Schrader, question number 2, thoughts?
I would limit it to 3. I agree with that, because I think that it gives us a chance to understand if people are really looking into, to really recognize what we've been facing here. And then see if it aligns with what.
Is your mic on, Martha?
Pardon me?
You're not speaking in the mic.
Oh, sorry. I like the idea of limiting it to 3 and making it as specific as possible, you
Okay.
know?
So Gary, I'm hoping you're following me on this.
Yes.
So we're going to modify number 2, and I think hopefully you're picking up some of the input from my colleagues here. And number 3 question is, what attributes uniquely qualify you to be the Clackamas County Commissioner? Are you in on that, Paul?
I like that question, but I also like the question below it, and somehow can that be folded into one question? And it kind of is, because it's just one bullet with 2 of those there. So, but I do like what that's trying to tease out.
That could get to your public service, community service wording with that, within those 2 questions, in one question.
Okay.
You guys think so?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm seeing kind of 2 thumbs up with a little bit of tweak to
Yeah,
it, correct?
tweaking it to what Paul said.
Is that all right, Martha? Okay, you got that, Gary?
Yes.
So I'm going to jump down to 4 then. Describe your particular interest in any specific aspect of county service. I'm going to start with you again, Paul.
I don't think that really does a lot for me if the other ones are included, because we get to that in a different way. What are the most pressing issues, and then, and what are your attributes, right? Because I think that collectively, if it's worded correctly, we can answer that question with the others.
Okay, so it's kind of down.
I totally agree. I think we've merged 2 questions and been a little more specific, but because that only gives us 2 questions now, I think I'm okay with the first one being a little bit more of a broader one, with why do you wish to serve as a commissioner? That gives us 3 total. I think that's a fair amount. If they maybe give, I don't know what we think the word count should be, but it should be enough you can show yourself to be concise and pithy, but also be able to answer the question within a word limit, I think is good.
And so, Martha, are you in agreement with that?
Yep, I could get there, yep.
Okay, and so then I think the best way to do it is let staff sort out the word count, if that'd be all right with you guys and gals.
So you want 3 questions?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're adding back number 1, correct?
I think so, because it allows it to be a little bit broader and more personable, and then we get into specifics in the other 2.
Is that enough direction on that one?
I got direction. I'm taking notes of what you asked for.
Can you
yes.
repeat it back so I understand it?
Question 1, why do you wish to serve as a county commissioner? Question 2, in your opinion, what are the 3 most pressing issues affecting Clackamas County? What policy interventions would you advocate for to address those issues? Question 3, what attributes uniquely qualify you to be a Clackamas County commissioner? What expertise, experience, and community service will bring you to the will you bring to the commission?
Okay. I like your so if you capture that, I'm good.
Is that okay, commissioners?
I'm curious.
Yes, and just to be clear, to follow up with what Paul was saying, they'll, somewhere in the application, be about the schedule, right?
Yeah, this job requires.
Right, right, okay.
Do you want them to check a box, yes or no?
Yeah, this is a,
Knowledge, I don't know. It could
Agreement.
just be, it could be in the preamble of the application.
yeah, there you go.
Expectations for the job. Yeah.
All right, so now I'm going to go back to criteria for applicant. Are we ready to move to that? I feel like we are. And,
Attachment D. Do you wish to add, the board may consider the following criteria in the selection process and the bulleted list. Would you like to add that or not?
You know, I would, the second bullet where it says prior elected experience, I would like to change that to prior community service. Maybe that's not exactly how I'd word it, but something that gets to, because I don't necessarily, I mean, people do a lot of good work and know the county and did it on community service. I think that's how a lot of us got here, right? Some people use governmental service. I'm not necessarily sure that's the word I want to use.
Commissioner West.
I think we have to speak to prior elected experience. Are we going to consider anybody who has previously run for the Board of County Commissioners and lost, or something along those lines? It's a pretty broad group. Some have won and then lost and held the seat. Some have never held the seat and lost. A significant amount of voters have already weighed in. It gets controversial. You're picking, and then you're kind of having to get into like, we're having to pick colleagues that we previously served with potentially versus not served with in previous relationships. Do we punt this back to the voters so that if a previous commissioner wants to run again, they can run in an open seat or they can run in 26 and get that seat back? But the voters have already kind of weighed in on some of this. I think that we should maybe have an idea about if you've previously been a commissioner or not, should we be, or have run and lost, should you be considered?
And, so what's your opinion on that?
I'm open. I think that we need to openly discuss it. I think that's kind of a little bit of the elephant in the room with the community. I do think that I do think potentially that if you have already run and the voters at any level have already said thumbs up or thumbs down to you, that you should go back to the voters and ask for the job again. If the voters already let you go and said we decided to pick somebody else, then maybe we should allow that to kind of stand, and then they can run again in 26 in a few more months. That election cycle is going to be coming, and I'm not opposed to that idea. To saying if you've already been on the commission, then. And you've ran and lost, then maybe we shouldn't, maybe that should be a qualifying matter. Maybe it shouldn't, but I think some of these people bring wealth of experience too. They hit the ground running, they know how to do the job right out the gate too, but that's kind of my thoughts.
Martha, what are your thoughts?
I would tend to agree with that, actually, because I know my own personal experience is that when I lost, I ran again. This was not for this seat, it was for a Senate seat that I lost. And I determined that getting an appointment wasn't the way to go, and that it was essential for me to run again in order to get back on the commission. So I resulted back on the commission. So I do think it's important for people to make that effort. and that even though I was first appointed, I hadn't run before and lost anything. But it's. I think if you really want it back, try and run. Yep.
Commissioner Savas.
Yeah, well, at the beginning of this, I was thinking, well, we can always deal with that later on our own, but now that it's on the table, I just want to just say that, just reading, I read almost every email that came in up until 10 o'clock last night, and I didn't read anything from 10 o'clock forward. So there's a vast spectrum of opinions, and some of which I think have some legitimacy, but on one end of the spectrum, there's the points that, experience, being able to hit the ground running is a thing of value. The other one is, I'll just use stronger words, some of that's in some of the emails, but, that person was essentially fired from the position or not reelected, so therefore they should not be, that you're going against the will of the voters when they voted someone out. So those are the two extremes and everything else in between. So, I don't know that I really want to convey that in here now, but I think I appreciate the fact that we discussed it, but I think that's something that we need to settle on somewhere along the lines and maybe say, well, there might be extenuating circumstances or unique circumstances. Certainly, this particular seat from the beginning, when I first got here, if you look at how this one seat, seat number 4, had the turmoil has been and how the appointments have gone and so forth, it's been quite interesting. I don't think that it has nothing to do with necessarily the seat number, the number 4, but just seems that it's been somewhat turbulent.
So, if I interpret your statement, yeah, it's about as clear as mud, yeah. I think that,
I'll just go back, just to make sure it's clear. I don't necessarily think it's something we need to include now.
Okay.
That's my opinion. So that's how, I just want to just qualify the clarity. It doesn't need to be included now. Just to help.
thoughts, I see
I suggest you do not need to make that decision today, and you're putting yourself in a box too, because you want to see who applies and what the quality of the candidates are and their experience. And you may be in a position where you make a decision today you will regret when you see the list. I would suggest you add back, though, prior elected experience, because that does address what you just talked about.
Yeah.
And part of your consideration. Do they have a prior elected experience or not? So perhaps we could have 2, prior elected experience and prior community service.
Yeah, so I think the other topic, so if my colleagues are okay with prior elected experience, putting that back on there?
That's
Is there
fine.
good- Go ahead.
So my question about that is, we'll only consider people with prior elected experience? When you
No, I think it was just, do you have it?
Do you have it?
Do you have it or not?
So are they answering that? So are these additional questions that they're going to be answering?
No, so what I'm suggesting, the board may consider these criteria
These
as they
criteria,
review
but
your
it's not
application.
necessarily,
Not that
well,
they
like it's a
will.
preferred thing. Like you go on an application and they say, we prefer you have 5 years' experience in
Not
managerial.
even that. The
Not
board
even that, I
may
don't
consider.
May consider,
That's-
but it's similar kind of vibe.
Yes, and so
Okay.
the smart applicant, seeing this, will say, I'm going to address this in my cover letter. That's
Okay.
why we put this here.
Okay, I'm totally fine with that.
Yeah, and again, that other bullet where it says years of community service and what types of community, to me,
Service,
that weighs, for me, that weighs a lot, right? And I won't say necessarily more than elected experience, but it's got a lot of value to me over the years. So I appreciate it being in there, and the word may just says, sure, and we may consider, the geographic one, I just want to touch on that. It'd be a shame if all 5 county commissioners all came from one area, Clackamas County, whether it's Lake Oswego or Wilsonville or whatnot. But if you look historically, there's areas that haven't had a lot of people at the table, and Lake Oswego's had someone on this dais for as long as I can remember. And I'm not picking on Martha.
Well, remember though, when I first came on, I gotta be honest with you, I lived in rural, unincorporated area of Canby and ran a farm for 60 years. And then circumstances changed, and that's when I moved to, I couldn't much handle a 60-acre farm alone, let me put it that way. Okay, but.
So if my colleagues are good with these questions then, or they're not really questions, but basically things to consider in it.
I have one to ferret out. It says on the may consider, Chair, plan to run or not in the next election for this seat. So we're not asking them to clarify, but that's not clear to them either because it's either or. I mean, you either are going to run again or you're not going to run again. So that's not.
You may consider that in your application. If a candidate says, I just want to be a caretaker, I'm not going to run for the election.
Okay.
You want to know that, and that's up to them to disclose that, or you could ask that during the interview process.
During the interview process, okay. Okay.
All right, Gary.
Direction on that. If I may, attachment E, my only question is, would you like to have a public community meeting for the public to meet the candidates, or just invite them to the interviews they'll have with you here in this room? Like a separate community meeting for the public to meet the finalists?
I'm going to start with Martha. Your thoughts on this? Sorry, Paul.
Community meeting. I'm okay with it if it's handled and framed in a way where, you know, there were sidebars around it, you know, because people already have folks who they are lobbying for, and I don't want it to turn into a lobbying discussion as much as attributes of people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Commissioners.
so that's just
West.
me.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
I'll go. I think we're on a tight timeline, and that's a lot to put together on staff, and we've already shortened that timeline. I think it will keep it incredibly public, and people can communicate in our Thursday business meetings, and they can fully give their
Okay,
opinion
there
and
you go.
communicate by email. But I think that, I mean, mixers are fun, but I don't know if that's going to really have an impact on how this process works. So I would say no.
If we're going to have an expedited timeframe, I don't put a lot of value in a mixer or a meet and greet. But what I do, I said it last week, and I mean it, you know, I want this process to be as transparent as possible. And so I think the interviews, and I want to make sure we touch on the number of people when we narrow it, I want to get back to that, but that the interviews are public, and the public they can attend, obviously. And that we have an opportunity, when we do those interviews, that we're not asking vanilla questions. We're asking good questions, and they all could be individual and vary. So that's what I would let go of, again, the meet and greet, and those, just to, if they're, again, we're to have an expedited process and put the value and stock in those public interviews.
And I do recall when I was appointed the first time, it was really the commission, and then people came to the meetings to listen. Yeah, I remember that.
So I think the direction is pretty clear. I'll just voice my thoughts. And I actually agree with you, all of you on one hand. I also think it's, you know, that whoever this person is, they're going to work for you. And kind of a chance to meet and greet, and a lot of times people might have a personal question they want to ask. And so I think it is valuable, but I think it's, listening to my colleagues also, that kind of on a time issue, that is, if all of the things considered, you know, I'd say that is maybe not quite as important. If we had the time to make it work, I'd love to see it, but I think my colleagues are clear on that. So, Gary, what else do we need on this? So we want to follow up on narrowing them down?
Yeah, I mean, I just have some idea, right? Because, you know, if I'm going to be filtering through applications, and let's just say there's 80, right? You know, am I going to filter out the top 15? Or, I mean, I think we ought to be clear on that as soon as possible. That'll give me at least guidance as it come along as to and then after the 15, is it going to be 15 interviews, or was it narrow it down again? And I see what's in here to some degree, but not that level of details. Or 2 steps, 1 step? When do we get to talk publicly as a board? That's another aspect of transparency with regard to that, as opposed to us just submitting them to staff and let them filter out, oh, well, you know, you guys got to collate all that and figure out what do we actually have, and that's gives me a little bit of pause, knowing that maybe a good candidate might be thrown out because mathematically it didn't have enough. But there's got to be some process. What is that?
We'll be as transparent as you're willing to be. You can do all of this in public. So ideally, it depends how many rounds of interviews you want to do. but you would ideally narrow it down to 10. Again, you need to know how many applicants have applied. So I think these are things you don't have to decide today, but you would ideally narrow it down to 10. And talk about that in public. You maybe pick your top 10 and see which 10 align. You may not have the listed aligns, so you're going to negotiate to a top 10. Then at that point, you would do, yes, either public interviews, or you could do team interviews that are not public. I'm not suggesting that, but you could, to narrow it down to 5. 5 is the ideal number to bring to the public interviews for the forum. But I would say the first round would be 10, and you could talk about that again. So I'm going to advise, you don't need to make that decision today. You've given plenty of direction to staff to open a recruitment process, to get the word out, 3 weeks. You can talk about it before that closes. But I would advise, yes, narrow it down to 10 and then start the interview process.
All right. Commissioner West, do you still have a question? Yes, sir.
Two things. That seems like 10 is a lot. I ideally want to make sure we have enough flexibility to not be super rigid, because what if we're like, well, let's say it's 5, and we're like, oh my God, that we have to have 6. It's so hard to pick. We're going to have to publicly talk about this, right? Like a little bit. Like, how do you recommend that as Administrator Gary with like?
You get to make the decision, yes.
Is 10 a lot, or do you find that to be common in this process?
I'm just using like a staff recruitment. We usually narrow it down to 10 to 12.
Okay.
For the first round of interviews, then we narrow it down to 3 to 4 for the second round of interviews, then down to 2 or 3 that goes to the hiring manager. So this is not a staff position, but you get to decide. You may narrow it down to 12, you may narrow it down to 3. Again, it depends on the applicant pool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm totally open to whatever the board. I do also want to bring up an issue to make sure we don't forget that I think for ethical reasons and for fairness, the moment that you put live on the application process, we do not meet or talk to any applicant or anybody looking to apply, that we do not speak with them, because we can't speak to all of them and it's unfair. So as we get lobbied and whatnot, I think that we need to be in alignment with one another and staff in the process and be transparent, but I won't be meeting with anybody the moment it goes live. When it goes live, if you're an applicant or want to apply, do not call my number. Just don't. Don't call my staff, don't call my number, because I want to be fair to everybody who applies once we push go. I don't know if everybody feels the same way. I just want to plus we don't have the time to talk to 80 people. We just legitimately don't.
Right, and I think what's kind of been a struggle for me in not knowing the protocol, and I have gotten calls, and so I agree with you. I think if this is the protocol that we're going to adopt, I think it would even help future boards, like, hey, if we get into this position, the goal is, hey, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. You know, as it stands now, hey, here's the position and apply. But I think there's an agreement. You've said that too.
I've said it, so I think as we adopt that as policy and make it public today, so people aren't surprised or upset, it's
Right.
board policy that we are not going to communicate until after the process is over. Sorry.
Right.
Once we push go, a lot of conversations have happened, but once we
Right,
push go.
right. And I think it's good to kind of put this down for the future, Gary, another topic, to kind of have some protocols for us in the future. I think the other thing, this kind of question is probably more towards Jane and Gary, is that I see on here, you must be a U.S. citizen and stuff, but this is such an enormous position of trust that, can we put on there, you cannot have a criminal record?
I'd have to look into that. So this issue did come up with recent events. And a county commissioner can keep office if they have a criminal record. There are some positions that are statewide elected positions that are prohibited, do prohibit the position holder from having a criminal background. County commissioner is not one of those. But I do think, and I would do some more research into this, that the county could run a background check. I mean, that could be something that we
would be a
do.
good idea.
Totally okay with that.
Okay.
Yeah, Commissioner Savas.
So I have a question. Could that opening line be reworded, maybe just to say it's not our policy, but I think it'd be clear if it read, in order to serve as a county commissioner in the state of Oregon, that's what I'm inserting, the state of Oregon, because these aren't our rules, this is state statute. So I think adding those words, a county commissioner in the state of Oregon, would help people understand, these are not our criteria.
Yes, got it.
All right. Are we ready to move forward? Yeah, Commissioner West has
No, sorry. I think we should, right now, we don't want to let that pass by. We need stability. So I don't want to, like, 3 months into it, the media pops off on the new commissioner that they have this thing in their background and we didn't fully vet them. We want stable. I would like us to do a background check, at least on the final round of applicants. I don't know, maybe we want to do at least at that 10 level, some level within that. You know, they can be expensive and costly, so we'd have to do it relatively early on because it takes time to get them back. But it also might weed out some people that might have some struggles, and we then don't have to worry about it.
So maybe one of the questions could be, would you be willing to submit to a background check?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
One of the questions could be, would you be willing to submit to a background check?
Background check, yeah.
That's one way, yeah, to have that included is important, but have it included in that way is probably even better yet, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
You okay?
Yep.
So you want to add that question?
Nope.
About a background check? Okay. That will add a little bit of time to the timeline, which we'll expedite as best we can.
What are those, can you explain like what that reality?
Well, you don't do a background check overnight. It takes 2 or 3 days. But we can try to do it simultaneously with the other
That could be
paths.
something we could stipulate early enough, right? That a background check is
You
highly
don't want to do it for all
recommended.
candidates, just the finalists, I'm hearing. There's an
Just
expense as
the
well to this.
finalists.
Yeah.
Jane?
And just
And
to
then I
clarify.
think it's also letting staff identify the depth of that background, right? I mean, there's way a number of levels of backgrounds, and I think just delegating staff to do what they see as an appropriate background to
Well, we come back to you to get your approval on the level of depth, so we'll come back to you on that. And Jane had a comment?
That was just going to be my question is, would you want them to do the same criminal background check, which is what we run for employees, or do you want it to be more extensive?
I have no idea what those levels are.
Can we address that later?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
I have no idea what
We'll
those.
come back to
So
you
we'll
on
let
that.
staff kind of work on that.
Yes, yes.
All right.
I have clear direction. Thank you. So we're opening this tomorrow, Wednesday, March 19th. We'll do a massive outreach. It'll be open for 3 weeks. I'll keep you posted. All right, your final item today is Commissioner Communications. You're up against the hour, but it will take as long or short as you wish, Commissioners.
All right, we are up against the hour, so I'm going to start with you, Commissioner Schrader.
Yeah, I had an interesting meeting the other day where I've been involved with a group called Braver Angels, and they had and this is a group of Republicans and Democrats that get together to talk about, public issues that are happening today. And the one issue we talked about was, what did you think about, Oregon being a sanctuary state? And it was a pretty interesting conversation. I thought there were people there who were pro and people who were against. But the interesting piece of this was that it was a cordial conversation. It was very well managed. They had someone there who kept it to debate rules. The debate never got heated. The debate never got out of hand. But we all learned a few things from one another. And one of the things I learned, which I thought was interesting, and Jane, I was going to have you look into this, is that in the sanctuary law, evidently in this state, it does not apply to people who have committed crimes. That already kind of evidently baked into that, if you are someone who is undocumented / illegal, whatever you want to call it, if you have committed a crime, that does not necessarily give you. It really is just covering people who seem to want to, who are here, who remain undocumented, but are contributing in terms of working and paying, Social Security. So I just thought that might be an interesting thing to point out, that because I know it's a controversial thing these days, but as someone who was a farmer and worked with people to this was back in the 80s, to get paperwork because they were working and they had children and they were supporting them, and often would see their kids in high school where I was a teacher. that there is a difference, there's a significant difference between saying that, if you're undocumented and haven't committed a crime, you get a little more grace to follow a process to remain here and contribute. It does not say that anyone who's been a criminal or criminal activity cannot be removed and prosecuted. So that was something, I wanted to look into that statute because I think there's some clarification we need on that. And one interesting comment was a woman who said that, that she didn't like the fact that we use it as an economic issue as well, because as someone who ran a farm, a lot of, the people that came to pick my berries and things like that were, we didn't, at the time when we were doing this, you didn't ask right away, but her point was, don't use it as an economic argument because people who are coming there and working really deserve to have adequate pay in order to do that work. And when you say it's economic, their question was, are you abusing people who are just there because they need the job and you can pay them lower pay? So I thought those are the interesting conversations. And what I liked about it, it wasn't negative. It was really kind of having a conversation about what are our differences of opinion and why they were there. So I like the group because it's bipartisan and it's a national organization, and it helps us have these difficult conversations in a really productive way as we, go ahead and deal with all of this that we've been dealing with now. So that was kind of an eye-opener to me. We also had a retreat, and I thought it was very well done. Ben and I found out that our temperament profiles are very similar. But I'm the only one that's ever gotten a 10 out of 10 on innovation. Okay, so I thought that was kind of interesting because I always like to look at new ideas. I like to see if they're going to fly. But I'm glad that I have guardrails around me like Gary and the rest of you that say, well, wait a minute, Martha, we gotta think this through because I get the idea and I always want to run with it. And my one story with Gary was I wanted to do what we call No Mow May because I had gotten this email from the Xerxes, which is kind of a pollination bee society. They said, we do mow, and it helps the pollinators. So I just called I say, hey, let's do No Mow May. It was, again, one of those very interesting, innovative ideas. But I remember, Gary, you hauled me into your office and said, Martha, you have to run it by me, which I did. And then, you have to be able to run with ideas, but make sure you get people on board with them first as you try to innovate and move forward. So that's it was a good retreat. It was fun to be there with all of you guys and get to know each other even better. I particularly want to thank Jane, who was very, very helpful to me during that retreat. So thank you, Jane, for that too. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Martha. Commissioner Savas?
Yeah. Briefly, I kind of mentioned it before, but I'll just amplify a little bit. I did read a lot of those emails. I would continue to read all the emails. Some of them are very similar. They're cut and paste, so they're almost form emails. But I do appreciate the people that individualize their comments and emphasize their points. It's a whole range of things. But it's interesting. If you have the time to read them, and I will continue to read them. I spent yesterday in Salem. Always very disheartening to go to Salem and realize how things either fall apart or aren't fully understood, and it's frustrating. It's nerve-wracking. Maybe we have more time to talk about some things that are either coming together on the good side or falling apart on the other side. But it's always, I don't leave there often in amazement of efficiency and closure or anything else. Those are things that are just absent from the process, it seems. But primarily, they're obviously on transportation issues, whether it's the I-205 project or not, or how other projects are moving forward and ours are not, or transit, or, you know, the Sunrise Gateway or housing. Certainly a lot of things on the table, and I do applaud our legislators for the time they put in, the hours they work during these cycles, and the myriad of different issues that they all have in the committees they sit on. So glad I'm not a legislator, that's all I can say.
Thanks,
I
Paul.
yield back, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner West.
Thank you. I have not given my NACO update. A lot has happened. So I'm just going to wind the clock back a little bit. Chair Roberts and Commissioner Schrader and I were all in Washington, D.C. during NACO. That's the National Association of Counties Legislative Days. We get to help put forth the policy initiatives at a national level where the National Association will advocate and work and lobby with the legislators on the Hill. And then we also get a chance to really meet with our congressional delegation. I had a lovely meeting with Speaker Johnson. I had a great meeting with Congressman Mark Green, the chairman of Homeland Security, and some other members of Congress. So even they may not be in our delegation, sometimes we're able to get influence beyond just Oregon and have important conversations. And I was able to really fight for some health policy initiatives at the national level within NACO. So even though we're a smaller state by size and we don't have the largest congressional delegation, I promise you, if you show up and you do the work and you advocate the right way, you can get things put into policy positions for large organizations that not just benefit Oregon, but the country as a whole. And that's a lot of fun. So two things I was able to get NACO to adopt, or at least to put forward to the board in July, was we wanted to do an emergency, we did an emergency policy resolution on helping getting access to medical care, not just in the rural area, but across the country. And that was around asking CMS, that is the Center for, I always get them backwards, I think it's Medicare and Medicaid is the correct order. To recognize and to fully reimburse the full scope of practice for nurse practitioners and physician's assistants to provide primary care and to support their efforts within their scope of practice. And I was able to get that worded just right and put into as a policy position. We have to utilize more advanced practices to make sure people get the kind of care they need and to make it more affordable. It's a smart way to bend the cost curve. As a nurse, I'm quite passionate about utilizing those independent scopes of practice that might not be a physician or an MD, but they're completely competent and capable to help provide healthcare where we don't have it. And right now, they don't have the same reimbursement rates everywhere in the country, and they're not fully recognized to the full scope of their practice. But we need all hands on deck to deal with the issues around healthcare that we face, and so we fought for that. The other thing that's quite personal to me is that we got, and it was really cool to see the movement in the courts on this. This is really changing. During Don't Ask, Don't Tell, that was if you were a gay or lesbian service member in the armed services, you could be dishonorably discharged solely for being gay or lesbian. That policy was around the Clinton administration. My spouse left the Air Force because he was afraid of some of the issues around Don't Ask, Don't Tell. I know people who still have a dishonorable discharge, and the sole reason for being dishonorably discharged is for being gay or lesbian. I serve as an officer in the United States Navy as an openly gay man, and I am passionate about if you can do the job, you show up and do the work, and you're a good member of our military, that regardless of those immutable traits, that you will get full benefits restored to you posthumously or currently. And so fighting for those veterans that wear the uniform like I wear it, and they're proud to serve their country and they've served their country honorably, to go back and have that reverse, that if you were dishonorably discharged solely for being who you are, then the government would reverse those facts and you would get full benefits restored. NACO proudly adopted that measure moving forward under healthcare veterans policy. And so that I'm proud of that work. You may not agree with me, but that's where I stand on it, and we can have that conversation. But I'm really proud to be able to advocate for Oregon and people across this country in that way, and to kind of put my fingerprint a little bit in how we move forward with policy. It was super fun, and I think we had some good productive times as a Martha and had a lovely dinner with you, Craig Roberts. So thank you. And I just wanted to give that, I haven't had a chance to give that update, but there's an update from the work I was doing and that we were doing as a group at NACO.
I'll remember to give my time next
Yeah.
time. I have a few things, but not now. Thank you.
You bet. So I think I'm looking at the clock here, so in the interest of time, I might just hold up my comments till this Thursday. Just highlights, I'd like to kind of follow up on, Ben, a lot of the stuff that we did in NACO legislatively, some really important work, so it was nice to see us all as a team there working. And then kind of also teaming up with AOC on some efforts to really make sure we're standing up for Oregonians. We also had this retreat this weekend, more of a team building exercise and coming up with kind of how we're going to work together and prioritize things. We have a fall strategic plan, so I wanted to really give my thanks to my fellow colleagues for participating in that. I felt like it was beneficial, and we're understanding how we can better work together in a number of different ways. So we have, well, the one thing I can tell you on the assessment of all of us, we all bring something slightly different to the table, and that's what makes us unique and a good team. We're not all alike. And, you know, as we know, Paul is a detailed kind of guy, and Martha's a START project, and Ben and I are on a lot of the same issues that really trying to move things forward. And so it was really beneficial. So with that, if there's no other business, I'm going to adjourn. We've got to be back here at 1:30. So with that being said, on behalf of the board, thank you for being here, and we're adjourned.